Listen, everything I know about football says the Vikings have to be worse next year. Have to be. They just have to be worse next year. They are completely over recorded their performance, if you will. They won more games than anything about their statistics suggests they should have. They were 8-1 at home. Crazy town. For a team
11-0 one-score games.
Yeah, 11-0 one-score games. The points differential was negative. They just were almost touched by gold, Midas touch or whatever. Like everything they touched turned to gold. Everything in my heart says they have to be worse. I still look at this division and go, I don't know. I mean, Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears ought to be better this year. Is better enough to get you out of 13-3-14 to win the division. I don't know. The Packers, listen, I understand everybody likes Jordan Love from his entire career of 17 dropbacks or whatever it is. They almost have to take a step backwards until they figure out what it is that they have there. The Lions were a ton of fun to watch last year. Did seem to be pulling it together on defense. Can we really expect the same kind of fireworks out of that offense? They scored more points in this division than anybody else, and more than most teams in the NFL. They were the third in the NFC in total points scored, and they scored more points than the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll see. At the end of the day, you've got 4 teams in this division, none of which blow me away. I like the story in Minnesota, and so I'm going to stick with them. I think they win the division. That is, I have no football support for that other than, yes, I expect them to regress, but not enough to lose the division. I think the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers sit right in there around 500 like they did this year. Detroit could bump back a game or two to 7-10 or something. The Packers, same kind of range. Chicago is the wild card for me, and I'm actually going to bring them up to second in this division. I think they're going to be better. I don't think they're better enough to catch the Vikings, again, based on nothing other than I love the story. I think Fields is underrated. I think bringing in a haul of capital from when they had the first overall pick, which they sent to Carolina for DJ Moore plus. The team acquired assets in the offseason. I think they've got an opportunity to make a run for it. Whether or not Justin Fields is good enough to turn them into a playoff contender or not is to be determined. So I've got the Minnesota Vikings, the Chicago Bears, and then middling performances by the Lions and Packers. I won't say this is one of the better divisions in football, but I will say when you add up their records at the end of the year, you may be surprised. I think you may see a bunch of teams around 500 here.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you on that last point. I was going to say it, but you beat me to the punch, which is that I think this is a little bit slept on as a division. Like, we know the NFC is not very strong as a whole on the conference basis right now. I don't have it stacked the same way, but I do think when you get to the end of the season, do I think any of these teams are going to be awful? No, I don't. Now, that will inevitably prove to be incorrect, but as we stand here in early September, that's what I'm going to say. Here is my order in this particular division, Tim. You're not going to like it much. I have Detroit winning this division. I've decided to just go for it. Fuck it. Why not? They have to win it at some point, right? So why not now?
They don't.
I like the team. They're insane. They haven't won the division since it was the NFC Central.
Best points differential in the division last year.
Yeah, they were. You've made your own grave. You've dug your own grave with this, Tim. I have Chicago second as well. I have Chicago as like the surprise package. I feel like there's always one, right? There's always a surprise package in the league.
We both have Chicago second, blah, blah, blah. So there you go.
We both have Chicago second. Last year it was Seattle, right? Everyone was like, Seattle's going to suck because they got rid of Russell Wilson and they were very good and they made the playoffs. I think the Bears are going to be the surprise package. I'm with you on Justin Fields. I really liked him coming out of Ohio State. People were crapping on him because he was exceptionally up and down last year. I would just say, look at that team around him. They were horrendous. The bigger concern I have with Chicago is actually the defense was awful last year. It was second worst in points per game allowed. That is not good. That does need to get fixed. And listen, I'm not saying they're necessarily going to turn into the 85 Chicago Bears. I think with a defensive-minded head coach, Matt Eberflus, he will get them going a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, enough so that the offensive firepower that they've now acquired, Darnell Mooney, I think, is a good player. Claypool, if he does anything at this point, it's a bonus, but is a third option who can give you points in the paint. I think is not bad. I like Deontay Foreman. I like Khalil Herbert. I love DJ Moore. I think the team's going to take a step forward, so I've got them second. I have the Packers third, and I have Minnesota dead last. Minnesota is on my list is probably top of my backsliding teams. I won't go into the reasons. You've already elaborated on exactly what they are, which is they were incredibly lucky last year. every ball that could have bounced their way for the entire regular season. They played what I thought was a fairly limited and average Giants team in the playoffs at home, and they lost.
With
And I
an
think
MVP
that is
quarterback.
more the and I think that's more the Minnesota Vikings than the preceding season, which sounds kind of crazy because of the volume of evidence. But I just feel like there was just so much that went their way last year. I don't buy into it. Justin Jefferson's great. Hawkinson's great. Kirk will put up good numbers. Obviously, they get rid of Dalvin Cook, who was still productive for this team. Madison, we'll see what happens there. Defensively, they've aged a little bit. I think this is a team which is on the down slope as opposed to the upside. I think last year was the acme or the apex or the zenith or whatever fancy word you want to use for the top. And I think they're going to go down, down, down this year and find themselves in the cellar and restarting next year, which will put them in a good position because Cousins is out of contract and he's probably gone. Quick word on the Packers. I actually like the prospects for this team. I actually quite like Jordan Love as a future player for this team. They've got him under contract at a reasonable rate. They're not going to ask him to be Aaron Rodgers. That's the smart thing to do. LaFleur's going to have to alter how they approach things. A bit more Aaron Jones, a lot more A.J. Dillon, who had a pretty down year last year. I actually like the prospects for this team. They're not going to be a playoff team. I think they're going to be a middling team. And I think the Vikings are going to be in the kind of 6-ish wins range. Honestly, I think they're going to actually have quite a poor season. But I have Detroit winning the division because why the hell not? Let's have some fun in the preseason predictions that don't mean anything. But I do like the Lions, and I'm going to go with them. Defense got it together. Offense stays good. Jared Goff, high on the hog in 2023. Let's go Detroit and have some fun with a DFI team for a change.